Hey, mental health warriors, how are we doing out there? It's Cliff Bauman, your mental health warrior. I hope everybody's having a great week. And so far, they had a great weekend. It's really great to have you all back. I'm excited about today. I get a lot of questions, as I went on this journey as a mental health warrior and telling my story of hope, that a lot of veterans out there through their writings, maybe have written a book or thought about writing a book or and they want to know about, how to get that book published. And there's very different ways to do it. And I'm very happy and excited to have Hobbs Allison on with me today. He's from Amplify Publishing, and he's going to kind of go and walk you through those steps on, if you're a veteran out there and you've written a book, if you have literature, if you have art, or if you have any ways or any type of book or ever thought about publishing something. I thought it'd be really great to have him on and have him kind of explain that process. He's a pretty cool dude. I've had lots of conversations with him. So, kick back, enjoy, and I hope you enjoy the show today. It's going to be a great one. Kevin, the producer, he'll probably pop in every now and then. You guys know him by now. And so with that, Hobbs, I want to welcome you to the Mental Health Warrior podcast. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're very busy.
Absolutely, Cliff. And, first and foremost, we've discussed this before, but thank you for your service, and everyone out there is listening to the podcast. It's an amazing, amazing thing that you guys do. And it never goes by, a day never goes by when I hope they don't reach out to say thank you to the service members. So just want to put that out there first.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. And I know all my viewers really appreciate that. I've gotten to know you over the couple of months, and just so for anybody who's wondering how I know Hobbs or how I came to know him, we are actually currently working on a project together. We're not going to go into that because I really wanted him to explain how you go from not having anything to getting a book published, and in the different ways you can go and do that. But before we get into all that, Hobbs, I really would just want to know how you got into your line of work and really kind of where it started for you and how you wound up at Amplify and all that. And then from there, I just kind of want to go into if I'm Mr. Cliff Bauman, Joe Blow, and I got a stack of writings like that, or turn that into a book, and then how do I get it published?
Yeah. So, it's a quick short story, not that exciting, but I did not have a background in publishing. I'd moved to my location, kind of at a time working in a different industry. It was around 2008 where a massive shift in the credit market came to be. And the industry that I was in pretty much shut down for about a year and a half. So I was fortunate to, kind of start networking and have lunch with a gentleman that was an entrepreneur and had a publishing company. And we hit it off, and one thing led to another. I went into that hybrid world of publishing, which we'll discuss a little bit later, roughly 10 plus years ago. And recently, about 3 years ago, made a move to where I am now with Amplify Publishing. You mentioned that, Cliff. Mm-hmm. Amplify has various imprints underneath it. There's Amplify, there's Mascot, Subplot, Fiction, that we handle all different genres of publishing for different authors at any stage of that. So that's a quick down and dirty on how I ended up, in the publishing. And it's, we talked earlier, Cliff, you kind of asked, what's unique about it? I would say one of the most exciting parts and best aspects of the job is that every project's different.
Yeah.
Every author's different. It does, it's every message is different. So it's a very unique industry and space to help people, whatever their message might be, or whatever areas of expertise they have, or whatever passion they have is, most of the time it's coming through a book project, especially, in your case, Cliff, with the message that you're bringing out in a publishing form. So that's really one of the more unique aspects of it, is just every project's different, every need's different, and every final outcome and goal of an author is different. So it's exciting time.
And that's got to be pretty amazing, because if you go on Amplify, and we'll share their link on the podcast, so you go out and visit them and just see, the genres of different books that you guys do. And it's got to really be pretty amazing, because, when somebody decides to write a book or anything, or get anything published, they put a lot of heart and soul into that, right? And so they really want to make it something that resonates with people, because obviously it resonated with them or they wouldn't be doing that, right? Sure. And so it's very important that if you're going out there to look for a publisher or thinking about getting something published, it's important to find that publisher that really will work with you on your project, because some publishers may want to change a lot of things, some publishers don't want to change a lot of things, or some publishers will just try to make your writing better. And I really feel with, what I've done with Amplify, that you guys are really taking with what we did, and you're going to make it so much more better than what we had. And I think that's very important for a lot of people to realize is having that. I guess it's you know what? Why don't you explain the different types of publishing, and then I'll go back to what question I'm going to ask, because
sure,
I'm
yeah, and that was kind of a good segue. And for anyone out there that's really interested in options and what are my options? How would I move forward getting a book published, etc. There's really three basic options in the world right now of publishing. On one end of the spectrum is what's called traditional publishing. In the world of traditional publishing, those are primarily the publishers located in Manhattan and New York. A prospective author would put together what's called a query letter, which is information about themselves, their content, table of contents, maybe a sample or so, and then they would reach out to a literary agent with that query letter. Ideally, a literary, and you would reach out to multiple literary agents. I mean, some reach out to 10, some to 200. It's just kind of how much effort you want to put in there.
I think we did 200. We did a lot.
Yeah. If the literary agent then decides that they're interested in that author's project, they would sign that author. They would go into put together an agreement to represent that author. Mm-hmm. And then that literary agent in turn will try to sell the manuscript to the traditional publisher.
And traditional publishers, that's just the bigger publishing companies, the one that
Simon and Schuster, places like Penguin, places like that. Yeah. And so if that agent is successful selling that manuscript to that publishing house, then that publishing house will edit the book, design the book, print the book, and distribute the book. And if it continues to sell, if it sells enough for them to recover their cost and it continues to sell, then the author and the agent would split a percentage of future sales for that. There's pros and cons to that. The pros obviously would be no upfront cost. Another pro would be just, the ability to say I've had my book published by XYZ. The challenge of it is that as a first-time author, or unless an author has what you've heard this word, Cliff, you're part of it, a massive platform. Yeah. Then it just becomes very difficult. I mean, it's really about a 99% chance. It's almost winning the lottery, Yeah. So, and the other downside is you also have sold the rights to the book. You've lost creative control and you've lost ownership of the intellectual property, which, again, depending on goals of an author, that's an important aspect of the content you've created, is maintaining ownership and the ability to use that ownership in a lot of different areas, whether it's podcasts, blogs, professional speaking, etc. So traditional is on one side. On the opposite end of that spectrum is what's called self-publishing. It's primarily utilized through Amazon's Kindle digital publishing. Some of the pros for self-publishing would be, openness. I mean, you pretty much can publish anything you want on there. It could be 10 pages long. It could be 500 pages long. So you just upload it and you're there. Speed to market, certainly is a pro, advantage to self-publishing. And, again, then other pros would be somewhat low cost, of entry into that marketplace. Some of the negatives on that would be you kind of end up being a general contractor for your book. You're having to, organize editing, find a designer, do the cover design, do the interior layout, manage any marketing that you're going to do, manage any revenue back and forth. So you really are having to manage the entire project as a general contractor for self-publishing. And then the other challenge with self-publishing that we've probably everyone listening's, come across is that feeling of a book looking self-published.
Yeah.
It's just, you're limited with design, you're limited with editorial, et cetera, but you just end up with something oftentimes less than what you'd hoped to come out of that book. So that's the other end of the spectrum. And where a company like Amplify operates is in the world of hybrid publishing. So hence the name, it's kind of a blend of both sides of that, of the end of the spectrums that I mentioned. With hybrid publishing, you would engage a publisher with expertise in editing, design, marketing, distribution, printing, et cetera, and utilize and work with that team to bring the book at whatever level, at whatever start point you're at, to whether it's how much editorial need, how much, the cover design, et cetera. You'll be involved with them and have a team of experts on your team, building the book at the highest possible quality level, equal to, if not sometimes better than what's coming out of Manhattan. Yet you're also going to retain ownership of all the intellectual property. And importantly, for a lot of authors, is creative approval through the process. Yeah. So what does creative approval mean? For example, if the book's getting edited, our author would see the line edits and approve, disapprove, or discuss. Yeah. Cover design, for example, the author would be involved in a vision that he or she may have for that cover. Interior design, same thing. Throughout the stages of the process, it's benchmarked based on author approval, which, because a lot of people have a specific vision and idea for their book, and we want to be able to blend that with the expertise of the publishing world and the experts that we have on, that are doing the design work and the editing work and the distribution, but also still giving that author, a say in the eventual outcome of the book. So,
I think that's kind of important. So, as we went down this road, we did have an offer from a big publishing company, and we looked at all spectrums, just like you talked about. We looked at traditional, we looked at hybrid, we looked at self-publishing. And one of the reasons that we chose to go with the hybrid approach was for that simple fact, is that we retain the rights of the intellectual properties of the book. And my fear with going into traditional publishing, not that there's anything wrong with it, but my fear is that if they own it, and so if they wanted to take my story or my written words a little bit differently, then I couldn't say no to that, or I would have very limited ability to change with what they were doing. And for me, I didn't particularly care for that. For some people, that may be okay with that. It's what you want and how you perceive your book. With self-publishing, it's just kind of what you said is, my concern is, how could I make that book better without knowing how to make it better? Right. Right. It's funny, but it's not. I mean, so
no, it's true. Yeah. I mean,
write something and have somebody else read it. It's like doing a podcast. So how do you get somebody to watch your podcast to be interested in, right? You got to have all kinds of different content in it to get them to come watch. And so the same way with the book. So if I'm writing something, or if I'm going to publish something, but I've never done it before, right? And so I don't know how to get people engaged the way I want them engaged with the product that I'm getting them. And so that becomes the art. And so for us, and the reason we chose the hybrid approach was because you guys are going to take the product that we have and make it 200 times better, but without changing the product, because you guys are professionals in that, and that's what you do. And, for a lot of people, I think, maybe for the first time they're publishing or the second time, and depending upon what you're publishing, that's really a great approach to go with. Now, there's some costs associated with doing a hybrid publisher as opposed to the traditional whatever, but keep one thing in mind, and you brought up a great point, Hobbs, is when you go with a traditional publisher, they're going to get their money back first, right? Before you make any money, right? If you do it yourself, self-publishing, then of course you're going to make your money a little bit quicker. But I think along with self-publishing, I think with hybrid publishing, and you correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, is I feel that whether you self-publish or do a hybrid publisher, your return on investment is going to be pretty close to the same, with a lot less work if you go with a hybrid publishing, because if you publish it yourself, you have to do all the work.
Sure.
Right. And if anybody has dealt with Amazon, and there's nothing wrong with Amazon, Amazon will always take their money first. Right. And so the amount of money and how do you, if you're going to self-publish, get that book into the big bookstores, right? Or get it seen by somebody else outside of Amazon. And that's really where the benefit of having a hybrid publisher comes in, because you guys can take that next step and get that book out there in other genres that maybe you may not be able to get into if you self-publish. Would that be a fair statement to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. And I think the other thing too, to remember, and, again, different authors, different messages, different goals, there's you want to find the right fit. The one thing that I found with the books, one of them is that, it is a, kind of the gift that keeps on giving. It's much like social media this day. Once it's out there, it's no pulling it back. And so for many of our authors, the overwhelming majority, that's really an important aspect to remember, is that they want this book done at a level and quality that's going to not only represent them, their brand, but be moving many years forward. And oftentimes I end up talking with authors that might have made stubbed their toe in that self-publishing world the first time out. And then, understanding how important it is to have a book look like a book, talk like a book, and walk like a book, versus one that you're like, what is this?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's important. It goes back to what I was saying, is that, when you're writing a book is, you got probably about, what would you say, the first 10 pages, you got to get somebody roped into finishing that book. Because because I know I'm that way. If I start reading a book and it doesn't grab my attention in the first couple of pages, chances of me finishing that book is like zero.
Well, that together with, the other, saying you don't judge a book by a cover is not the truth. You 100% do, So, a good design can bring people in. And then, like you said, different people have different stages of how far they're willing to work with a book, like a bad movie or something, but it's just important. And that's one of the advantages, having quality editorial work done after your writing's completed. I tell authors many times, you don't want to try to sit down and write a perfect manuscript. Just get what you want to get out of your head onto the laptop, and then different editors have different levels of expertise and can help shape that content into making it that pleasurable read that you're talking about, Cliff, with where you're wanting to continue to read and move forward in the story. So, we've all ran it. I had an old boss of mine. He wrote a book. I think it was called The Lazarus Covenant, and it was a fictional book. But he was my boss, so I got him to sign it. This was a lot of years ago. But you read the first 5 pages of that book, and next thing you're 4 chapters in. You just didn't want to put it down, right? And so I think every author, wants to have that, response. They want somebody to get the same emotionals they did as they were writing it. And you brought up a great point. There's all kinds of books out there on how to write a book, right? That's kind of funny in itself. Buy a book on how to write a book, but it's important. But because it takes a level of commitment. They say write a couple of chapters a day or do this, that, but for us, just getting it on paper, just starting that, and if you're a person out there and you've kept a diary of things and you want to post your diary, just write that. And if you decide to go with a hybrid publisher, they're going to look at that and they're going to take what you have and put it in a way that when somebody reads the book, they'll understand it, because you guys have that expertise, right? So Cliff Bauman's never read a book. I don't know how to write a book to make somebody want to buy the book and read the book. But you, as a publisher, know what that needs to be done or what that needs to look like. I think is that. Yeah, no, 100% agree. I mean, that's one of the beauties of working with that hybrid, is that you're leaning on the expertise in all facets of the publishing experience, but also still, very much involved with the outcome of the story or content or, whatever type of book it's going to be. So it really is, kind of the best of both worlds.
And that's a great thing. Whether now on Amplify, can you talk about maybe some of the books that you publish that are out there and kind of and maybe talk like that, so somebody go out there and want to check out your website and maybe buy
Sure.
one of the books from one of the authors that you have out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog just ran by the door, making it stumbled me for a second.
Yeah. So the Amplify website is amplifypublishing.com. We also have mascotbooks.com. So in the world of publishing, you kind of have a company and then multiple imprints underneath that.
Okay.
Amplify is our thought leadership, big idea, current affairs, some political books. It really focuses in around the nonfiction area for important messages to be conveyed out into in a nonfiction type of setting. So, we just came out with another gentleman that was a commander of the U.S. Navy, David Sears. His book, Smarter, Not Harder, is kind of, working in that. It's a perfect title too.
Yeah.
Working with Smarter, Not Harder.
Right.
But it's just one example. We do a lot of work, kind of like in your world, Cliff, people that are really looking to get in front of groups and get their message out there for professional speaking and things like that. We have an author, Steve Cadigan, who was with LinkedIn when it was a relatively small company and grew it from a talent management point of view all the way up to from 700 to I think 4,000 employees. Yeah, wow, so he speaks around the world and about kind of the book is Workquake, which it's a new, it's really, it's about what's happened through the pandemic to come out. So really the key for us is.
It was called what? Workquake? Workquake?
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Workquake.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
And then, but yeah, I mean, the goal for us really is to find people that are excited about their message and using the book in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. Because that's really from the Amplify side, that's how you help an author create brand awareness about themselves and their message, is to have that book and utilize it in many different facets moving forwards.
And I think to somebody who writes a book and maybe it's a book about their personal stories and this, that, and the other, it takes a lot of courage to do that, for me to go out and tell my story of hope and to do the Mental Health Warrior, my podcast, I have to be pretty okay with, constantly talking about, maybe things that aren't so great. When I do my speaking events, I talk about my suicide attempt and my recovery and having a successful 34-year military career, even though my suicide attempt happened when I was just, 20 years of my career, not even. And so I think, when people do that, you always want to make sure that you're okay with the good and the bad, right? And so you would think with what I do, how could people say anything negative about that, right? Because all I'm doing is talking about PTSD and suicide and getting help and stuff. But we're in the age of the internet and the people sitting in lone, dark rooms just saying mean things. And so, if you do write a book, it gets published and it's out there, this is the Mental Health Warrior coming out right now. So I want to give it on, take it with a grain of salt. Like my dad always said, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words and lies will never hurt me. And that's true. I believe that. And I've instilled that in my children. And so, if you're going to be out there and you publish a book and you're going to put your stuff out there, just know that there's going to be people that's always going to be negative and try to goat you into something. Sure. It happened to me many times. Yeah. And you think it wouldn't happen, but it does. And a lot of times I just ignore them. I don't, if it's not something that's worth me saying, or somebody that's just lashing out and asking for help, that's something different. You can tell that in their words. Sure. But if it's just somebody just flat out being mean or bullying or something, I just ignore it.
Yeah. And the thing that I always fall back on, like, I've always been so impressed that someone could actually write enough content to make a book out of it, And so chances are anyone the chances are slim that someone is, being that negative toward your book has ever written a book. So
Right.
you can always fall back on that and say, you know what, look what I did. Look at my accomplishment.
I got that book published, you didn't. Right.
Exactly.
And it is a sense of self of accomplishment. I had a partner that helped with mine.
Sure.
And he did a lot, and he probably, and of course, his background, of course, editing and stuff, and his mom. I mean, he went through a whole process, but that process took us a year before we even started looking at publishers. And then when we started looking at publishers, Bill and I would meet, once a week or once every 2 weeks. And we had the spreadsheet. So it's always good to do your homework, mental health warriors. If you're going out there and looking at a publisher, it's good to go out and look at many different publishers. And I would say that we chose Amplify because they were the most open, upfront, and willing to work with us that we met with any of them. And we probably had 200 publishers on this spreadsheet. And it was a 3-month process. I don't know how many meetings we had with you, Hobbs. We probably drove you crazy talking to you. But I mean, we had, we had quite a few offers. We were lucky in that. And it just really came down to having that personal connection with Amplify is why we chose them. And I think that's important. It's just like when you go into a therapist, right? I tell this to people all the time. If you can't have that connection with your therapist, they're not going to be able to help you. Right. And it's the same with publishing book, because that book is something personal to you, right? Because you took the time and the effort to write it. And so you are going to be very defensive of that, like you are with your children, right? And, it's hard to let go. I know Bill had a hard time letting go. And I'm like, just got to let go. We hired him to do this process. Let him do it. But I get it, because you worked on this project for so long and it's so near and dear to you, and you want people who are going to publish your book to feel the same way. Right? That's how we want to project on people, and I think it's important that when people do go out there and you're looking through the process, and that's why I wanted Hobbs to come on today, and not through that I'm solely on Amplify or anything else. He's the only one I knew that was in the publishing world because of our relationship. And talk about it, because I do get asked that a lot of questions, and we just had a guest on not too long ago, Danae, and she has a bunch of artwork, and I think, hey, Kevin, she talked about maybe getting her stuff published. She's a writer for a newspaper and has a whole bunch of stories and talked about wanting to do a book, and that's really kind of spurred me on after we recorded her podcast to have you come on,
right?
Because we talked about that.
Everything's kind of tying in together, is what we're seeing, Hobbs. Like there's a reason, a bigger reason behind all these, for lack of better description, call it what it is, networking. And we're definitely all a part of something big when it comes to shedding light on what veterans face, and especially combat veterans. So yeah, it's definitely she's got a heart for veterans like you don't see that often. I mean, she's
never served in the military.
But just wants veterans to know. Same way you, and that's what I'm saying. Even there's that connection.
Yeah.
What you said, thanking veterans, then you say you thank veterans. That ties right into what she was saying. So these networking opportunities, what's so wonderful about them is the driving force behind them is let's see what we can do for our fellow brothers and sisters. It's not about us. We don't compete with one another. We work together through all, whether it be, I love to tell the story about how on our Saturday live podcast, just a few weeks ago, we had a veteran who was selling t-shirts, promoting his business. Well, we sell t-shirts, but we want to promote a veteran-owned business. That's what we do. We promote veteran-owned businesses for free at Veteran Trash Talk, including, the obvious. We're all about no suicides on our watch. That 22 number, our goal there is be wonderful to say that we're going to put an end to it. We're a little bit more realistic, and we're going to get that number 22 below national average. Again, there's no reason why veterans should be killing themselves at a higher number than the civilian population. So as a whole, you have now joined that team that is going to be a part of that resource, because veterans are going to see this and say, okay. And at the end, I could see it for no other reason than being completely therapeutic. It'd be like,
Well, no, that's what, you know, Cliff, one of the first things he mentioned is that any way writing can be beneficial to someone, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
again, and that kind of ties in hand with what I'm saying. It's like, you don't have to write a perfect book.
Right.
You know, get what's in your heart and in your mind out, and it's going to pay dividends, you know, whether it ends up being a book or not. And, you know, Cliff, obviously, you know, and kind of thanks for your, you know, for the kind words about Amplify. You know, it is important to be a good fit, you know, and so, you know, great advice that I'm not sure you need 200 on a spread list, but, you know, it is important to chat, understand your options, you know, understand your goals, you know, take a look at the mirror, you know, and say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish with this book? If anything, a lot of times, you know, we, you know, if it's, we have authors that sometimes, hey, this is a legacy thing, you know, I just want to get this done.
Yeah.
You know, and whether that's a, you know, fiction book, a memoir, a picture book, a photo, you know, book that you described, with that, there's a lot of ways that it can be beneficial to an individual to pursue the goal of really of writing and building and owning and having done a book, you know?
Yeah. You know, and that you bring up a great point, because some people, you know, they just write a book to get published, right? And they really don't care if it sells or not. They just want to get something published so that they have it published. Obviously with mine, you know, it's not just telling my story, but I want people to take something away from it that they want to go and ask for help. And that's why we all do what we do here at Veterans Trash Talk Network with my podcast, with Throat Punch Monday, another one that I do with Lynn, and then with Veterans Trash Talk on Saturday, is, you know, really, we just want to support the community and try to help. And some people may not be writing a book, but some people enjoy reading books, right? And so you got to have all kinds of different books out there, because people can find therapy through reading as much as they can through writing.
Definitely.
And you know, reading to some people is very important. They find it, you know, relaxing and kind of a gateway to them to go into their better place, or how they decompress. Yeah. And, you know, how you do that is have all kinds of different books out there, right? So because you never know what is going to read a non-fictional book, and maybe the next time they want to read a fictional book, right? Or a comic book, in my case.
You know, and it's even, you know, that you've got, you know, and even within the industry, you know, you've got 3 different products, really. You know, you've got the physical book, the electronic book and ebook, you know, and then you've got the audiobooks now, you know. So there's a lot of there's plenty of ways to get that therapeutic value of getting consuming the content.
You know, and I just thought about this, and I should have talked about it earlier. It just popped in my head. Things just pop in my head. It's how my brain works. But anyway, you know, and going back to the spreadsheet, what Bill and I went through, and this is very important. Once your book is published, and one thing you want to think about is if you're going to start doing speaking events, or if you're going to start doing anything, how is that book going to be continually published, and what does that look like, right? What we found out is that looks very on whichever company you're choosing from, right? And so some companies will pre-print X number of books for you, and then you have to pay for X number of books. Some companies will only give you X amount of books, and then you have to start a whole different process with them. And so, you know, Hobbs, and I just say that because, you know, that becomes very important, because like I said, if you want to have a legacy book or something that's going to be out there for a while, you want to have that ability to, you know, if let's say I'm going to go do a speaking event and I say, hey, I need to get 100 books shipped out to California, you know, that becomes very important. If I can, you know, pick up the phone and call, you know, Amplify Books, say, hey, I need 100 books shipped out there because I'm doing a speaking event, as opposed to, hey, I got to get, you know, 100 books shipped to my house and then I got to ship them out, or I have to pay additional fees. So I say all that to say that there's a whole bunch of little nuances that go into it based on what you want your book to be and look like when you go to publish it. And that's why Bill and I had so much and spent so much research on it, because it's those after effects that I think sometimes people don't think about when they publish it.
That's a great point, Cliff, you know, and like, I mean, it really, there's devils in the details, you know, and I think it can be a little overwhelming and confusing, and because it's very difficult to get that apples to apples comparison, you know, and I always said that, you know, every everything at Amplify, in my philosophy and our other, acquisition people's, philosophy is just explain the differences so that those authors know what it is, and then help them see where their goals and needs match up, because circling back to what I said at the start, every project's different, every content's different, every need's different. But, like anything, there are some, I wouldn't use the word shady, but there are some authors that get stuck, with publishers that just, they didn't communicate, they didn't understand exactly what was being delivered and what was required of the authors. So it's always tough when you talk to someone that's been through that. But the good news is you're getting this message out about the amount of research that you all have done. And then, we'll always be a reference, at Amplify, and, so they can find me anytime. And I like to talk publishing. So,
hey, and that's a big point, because I think there was probably 10 different hybrid publishers that we were talking to, along with talking with you guys. And some of the dealings or some of the things that after you talk with other hybrid publishers were like, that just really didn't sound right. And so, is there's always good people, there's always bad people, and I don't think anybody's out there to cheat anybody or anything like that. It really boils down to, you really need to do your homework. You spent all this time and all this effort to write this book, and you don't want to go slack when it's time to find a publisher. And so it's very important to find somebody that is your fit. And I will say that you guys were probably the most responsive at all of them. I would say the traditional publisher was probably the least responsive. Right. But I think that's because that's the nature of the business, right? And I think, of course, self-publishing, it was just us talking about ourselves and how much work we want to put into it. So really, for us, it was always going to be a hybrid solution for what we were going to do with the book. And I would say that we were in conversations with 10, and then we narrowed it down to 5, and then we narrowed it down to 3, and then we narrowed down to 4. 3, then to 2, and then we finally chose you guys. And I think we made the right choice for our project and our book. We're about ready to finish up here, Hobbs. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with anybody watching the show? We are going to show your website at the end, so people go out there and look at those great books that Amplify has. And go ahead and you can order directly from your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can. There's mascotbooks.com as well as amplifypublishing.com. So Mascot generally is more broad genres, more fiction, etc. And that and with those books, lots of children's books. We had a great story about the kind of Mascot 1.0. Our founder and CEO Naren Arel wasn't in the publishing industry, and this is 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
But his daughter kept asking about the mascot, his alma mater's mascot, the Virginia Tech Hokie. For the football team. He was trying to watch football, and she kept talking about the mascot. So on a whim, he printed 5,000 books and had to figure out how to sell them, and came across the intersection of licensing and sports, and started doing more and more children's books for New York Yankees, Dallas Cowboys, the Ohio State Buckeyes, etc. And so as you're finding out, Cliff, once you have a book and people know about the book, they all want to know how you did it and why you did it. Hence why we're talking today. Well, the same thing happens as a publisher. Once you have success, they want you to help them in other genres. So Mascot 2.0 is kind of expanding to other genres. And then the Amplified publishing has been around now for nearly 4 years. And that's kind of taken that nonfiction thought leadership space and things. So we have pretty much all genres covered throughout between Mascot Books and Amplify Publishing. So it's a very exciting time. We're growing. We're on, as you found out, you were talking about the responsiveness. I laugh all the time that publishing is one of the few industries that seems to be getting slower rather than faster sometimes. But Amplify is an entrepreneurial company. We've got 30 full-time employees located right outside of DC and in Herndon. And it's just an exciting time. We're bringing on more and more authors that that really have an impactful message that needs to get out there. And that's where we gain a lot of joy in what we're doing, is getting these messages that need to be heard, whether it's in the diversity and inclusion, or, suicide prevention, or a CEO is how I did it, why I did it, sharing his success, that sort of thing. So please reach out anytime. Both websites have information you can, fill out, and certainly, Cliff, I'm glad to talk to anybody. So if you want to make any introductions, post this with me. I'm always available.
Oh, absolutely. And if anybody watching this podcast, if you want to reach out to Amplify, just like Mr. Hobbs said, please do so through their website, or you can message me at Mental Health Warrior. I'll be more than happy. You're a busy man. One thing I want to say real quick is why when Bill and I was doing the research in Amplify, and we actually looked at your website, we looked at what books you were publishing, and then we went to bookstores to see if we could find your books in bookstores. And then we tried to find out how many of those books you were selling. Right. And so I'm telling you, when we did anal research, and we did this with all the publishers.
Wow.
So, I mean, when I tell you that we had a spreadsheet, I mean, we had a spreadsheet, brother. We were really into it, maybe too much.
I think you and I got to talk after this, Cliff. I want to see that spreadsheet. I'd be more than curious to look at it and dive into it.
I'll have him send it over to you. I know I know as we were going through the process, we took things off of it. But yeah, I'll have him send it over to you, because I mean, we would, Bill would call me on the phone. It's like, okay, I'm over here at the PX on base, and I see this book and I see that book, but I'm gonna go over to Barnes and Noble at Potomac
That's
Mill
great.
And see if that book's over there. And then I'm gonna ask the lady behind the counter if she knows how many of this book they've sold. I mean,
that's awesome.
So hey, when we were gonna do it, we were gonna do it right. And
proprietary information you're trying to gain there.
I know we were trying to. We were being sneaky about it, but awesome. For us that was important, because it's just for anybody, it's an important story, and we wanted to make sure that you care for your products.
Yep.
As much, and the only way we're going to know that is by doing the research to see if Amplify, and we did that with maybe not. I mean, we got down to the last 5. That's really when we started looking like that kind of detail.
Right.
But because that becomes, because you don't want to just have your book published and then they throw it on the back shelf and forget about it, and don't advertise it or do the media behind it, all kinds of things. If you're not like me, to have a podcast and do speaking events and things, how are you going to get your book advertised? And that's important. That was important for us.
Yeah, and I think it's you do touch. I know we're kind of wrapping up. You do touch on a wrap. Yeah, an important point there. You're the marketing and branding. A lot of that is really, you want to think way far in advance at the start of the book. Who do I know? What types of contacts have I made in the past? Really trying to figure out your target market. One of the things that we always want to see is an author that knows what lane he or she is in. If someone comes to us and says, "Hey, I've got a book that's everyone's going to love," that's red flags. That means no one's going to be interested in it. Mm-hmm. So, because a niche market is still a big market. So find what you do, what your story is about, and where you can really direct your energy as an author, because it is part of it's your, it is your baby in a sense, this book, and you're going to want to connect and promote this in all types of directions. So, there's a lot of brand building. Yeah. If that's a goal, again, everyone's going to have different goals, but if that's a goal, you want to start a lot sooner rather than later, as far as thinking about how you're going to brand yourself, what you can do to increase your platform, to whether it's social media or blogs, podcasts, that sort of thing. It's important to jump in, be all in, if you will, with the book to help gain awareness, because ultimately it's consumer preference is going to drive sales. So they've got to find out about you. Yeah. In one way or another.
And that's important. We live in a 30-second society, right? And so if you don't grab somebody's attention in 30 seconds, they're going to move on to 20,000 different other things on TikTok or Instagram. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not digging that. I'm just saying that you just got to be able to market it and get it out there, quickly, and grab people's attention quickly.
And and create conversation around it.
Yeah.
And that conversation can be short. It doesn't have to be a long, detailed conversation, but any conversation about a book is a good conversation, whether it's via media, old media, new media, etc.
That's awesome. Well, Hobbs, I'm going to go, Hobbs, sorry. So I'm going to wrap this up, but hey, Mental Health Warriors, I want to thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned something from Amplify. We'll share those websites out there so you can go out there and look at the different books, both on Amplify and Mascot. Find something you enjoy, and if you're an author and you wrote a book, or if you're in the process of writing a book, please reach out to them. My disclaimer is we chose them because of our research, and we talked about that research. So please go out there, do your research, and find that publisher that fits best with you and your project. So my Mental Health Warriors, you guys have a great week and take care. Rock on.